Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by Music Ally, the show that both looks at the finances of the music industry but also brings you stories and comments from the past week in the pop business. I'm Steve Lamack, he's Stuart Dredge. If you want an easy guide to what's going on in the music industry and how it all works, then here we are. This week, fraudulent streams on Apple, business rate changes for venues could save arenas millions of pounds, and the amount of music we're watching on YouTube. But first, as is our way, one impressive figure that you can take away from this week's show, which is...
Today's figure is $11 billion, and that is how much Spotify paid to the music industry in 2025, which it announced this week. And that is up from $10 billion the year before. So they've grown by 10%.
Right, and obviously Spotify will be happy with this. What's the reaction been from the rest of the industry?
Well, quite because it announced this during all the pre-Grammys hoo-ha last week, and all the labels were more focused on having their parties, I think. So no one's really been talking that much about it. But the interesting thing Spotify did was it made a point of saying, yes, we grew 10% last year in what we paid out, and that compared to 4% for other industry sources. So it's rivals. So it was kind of a big kind of saying, look, we're growing faster than the rivals. We're doing more paying out.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to throw at you was that another stat they gave, which I thought was really interesting. So this is a quote from Charlie Hellman, the head of music, who wrote this blog post about it, saying, there are now more artists generating over $100,000 a year from Spotify alone than were getting stocked on record store shelves at the height of the CD era. So that is their argument, saying we are paying good money out to more people than were even in the shops in the 90s.
Did they say which particular shop? I mean, there were some very big record shops. Is this your shop down the end of the street? Or is it, the mega stores back in the day?
I'm going to say it's megastores. I think they wouldn't do the comparison if it wasn't the big megastores.
What are they saying? How many? Do they actually give a figure then of how many artists are receiving this amount of money, over £100,000 from them? Have they put a stat on it, or have they just use this comparison so they don't have to?
Yeah, so there is a number. It is something Spotify releases every year, and it's a thing called the Loud and Clear report, which is due to be updated soon. The nearest stat I have last year is that in 2024, nearly 1,500 artists made over $1 million in royalties from Spotify.
Yeah.
So they're kind of it's interesting. And there was this phrase in the blog post about announcing all this, saying the rampant misinformation about streaming royalties. So this is kind of their punchback of people saying you don't pay out much, and them saying actually we're paying out more than the CD era.
I mean, obviously it's a hefty wedge of money, but I mean, the thing is, despite what they're saying about the spread of the money, when we know where most of it goes, and it all obviously goes to the most popular artists at the top end, and I think that's Spotify's problem when it comes to their reputation, because, if they think this is going to bring more people on side, then I think they might not be reading the room properly, because the majority of musicians, at least, won't necessarily be applauding the fact that they've paid out more money to the top tiers of your global pop stars. I mean, and good luck to them, they've earned it. But basically saying, we've made the big labels and the big pop stars more money is not the sort of story that's going to help sway what a lot of people think of them, even if they are saying, but there's loads of other people who are also raking it in, unlike you at the bottom level.
Well, that's it. And I think that's what this annual Loud and Clear report is about, which should be coming. It normally comes in spring, I think. And that's where they start breaking out, here's how many people earn $10,000. So the other thing I thought was interesting about this was, so there's only really two streaming services that announce this kind of payout figure regularly. So Spotify does it every year, and YouTube Music is the other one. So last year, YouTube said it paid out $8 billion to the music industry in the previous year. So it's kind of interesting to me that every year that's like $19 billion from Spotify and YouTube alone, which if you go back 20 years to that CD era and told someone, in 20 years time, a streaming service will pay $19 billion, people would have been like, what? You would have to explain what streaming was, obviously, first. But but like you say, it is these big figures, and it does, if you're an artist sat in your bedroom with a small royalty check, feeling really, really sort of sad, almost the more big numbers that come out, the worst you're going to feel because you're not seeing it.
How much profit do Spotify themselves make?
They were unprofitable for a long time. They've just started making profits recently.
because that's the other thing is we are paying out a lot of money. We ourselves though are now in profit, and also how much of our shares worth? Quite a lot of money. So who's there are a lot of people making money. It's not a philanthropic business. This Spotify is still going to make a lot of money, however much money they're paying out. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
They are doing very well out of this as well. Deflect it as much as you like. Say, oh, we the good guys. We've just paid out all this money and it's made more people, put more people on a decent career footing and are bringing in a decent annual wage. That's all fine. But, at the same point, they're doing all right, Spotify.
Well, yeah. So then in the third quarter of last year alone, they made, I think it was 582 million euros of operating profit. But it was interesting. So there's this blog post. People can go and look it up. If you look up Spotify for the Record, which is their press website, most of this blog post was talking about, and we keep 30% of the money we earn, and this is what we're spending it on this year. And there's a lot of talk about the tools they're going to launch for artists, new features. And there was this phrase, new features that will help more artists turn listening into tangible support from their fans. So that was part of this argument as well. They were saying, yes, we do keep some of this money and this is what we're spending it on for artists. And the other stat in this, actually, which I hadn't seen before, you can get tickets from Spotify. Like you can, if you're an artist like this, say, here's any concerts, buy tickets. They reckon they've helped artists sell more than $1 billion of tickets through that feature, which they'd never announced before. So I think you're right. I think that they're seeing these arguments and they're trying to combat them and say, look, this is what we're doing. This is how we're investing. And this is how we're helping artists. But I mean, like you say, people will have different opinions, but that ticketing figure made me think, okay, if you're an artist right now, you need to have your concert dates on Spotify and be trying to, have it point people to tickets, because that is clearly getting a little bit of traction, that feature. People are seeing it and buying tickets. So,
alternatively, that's driving an artist to put their music on Spotify, where, their royalty rate might not, will not bring them as much money as if they were selling direct to their fans, or maybe on another service. What the ticketing thing is doing is giving them another reason. I mean, there are places where, this may surprise you, where you can buy gig tickets already. And Spotify are basically taking part of that to bring more people to them. That's one. So if I'm going to play devil's advocate, there is that side of the argument, isn't there?
Well, I think in this sense, it's more they're pointing you towards those other ticketing places. I don't think they're not taking a cut of those sales.
Right.
So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's part of the package. Like, be on here, you could do this. But it does make me think, if you are going to be on there, then, and if you're an artist who hasn't connected up your concert dates with Spotify so that it can do it, like, that is worth doing. So that was one thing I took away from this thing, was like, because they've had this feature for a while, and I was like, I wonder how many tickets are being actually sold because you can put your ticket details on Spotify. And that's but yeah, I mean, it is interesting, because I think they give out the most information about the money they're paying out and what they're doing, but at the same time they get the most criticism. So it's a kind of a, it's a free for all whenever they put figures out. But that's good. Arguably, the more insight we have into what they're paying out, the more we can discuss where it's going and how fairly it's being shared. So,
okay. Aside from that, 3 of this week's big talking points, or at least 3, which we thought you might be interested in. Starting with this, talking of streaming services, there's another big number actually this week from Apple Music, and it's the number of fraudulent streams on Apple in 2025, which is, as I say, quite a big figure as well, isn't it?
Well, it sounds like a big figure, and then the context for it maybe says not so much. But yeah, so fraudulent streams, I mean, just to catch up anyone who's not been following that, that's when there's songs on a streaming service and they're being played not by humans in a real way. So they're being played by bots, or someone's got a warehouse of computers streaming around the clock. So that's what streaming fraud is. And yeah, last year, this is an interview with Oliver Schuster, who he used to be the boss of Apple's music business, and now he's more senior, but it's still under him. Up to 2 billion fraudulent streams last year on Apple Music alone.
Right. Okay.
Which is interesting, because this sounds bad at first glance, doesn't it? But then his next thing was like, but we identified those. And basically what he said was, we take the stream counts off, the fraudulent streams don't count. We take them out of the charts and we take the money and put it back into the pool so it goes to honourable artists. So it's kind of it's a boast, really. He's saying 2 billion streams, we spotted them and we took the money away from them and gave them back to human artists. So it's kind of a pitch there.
Well, it's all big figures though this week, isn't it? Spotify with a big payout, and Apple being able to say how many fraudulent streams they've spotted, and that brings us to story 2, which is the amount of music we're watching on YouTube, and again, that's quite a big figure.
It is, yeah. So this is from a company called Omdia, which is one of those big research companies that digs into stats from all the big internet services. Yeah, music videos are 33% of YouTube's total viewing time. So everything anyone watches on YouTube, from, well, the traditional cat videos, gaming videos, vlogging, but a third of everything is music videos, which is actually, it's grown. So 5 years ago, the then head of music at YouTube said that music was 25% of its watch time. So it was a quarter then, it's a third now. So music is getting more and more important to YouTube. It's the kind of, well, it's sort of positive news, like music's importance, because there's a lot of things it's competing with on there. But at the same time, it might be the spur for music labels to go, wow, and you should be paying us much more because look how important we are to your business. So it could spark a few arguments.
Yeah, that's so. In a way, good news for the industry.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what it didn't break down, and what I wanted to know was how much of that is actual sort of music videos for adults, and how much of it is wheels on the bus, as we discussed before here. You know, popular kids videos. But yeah, I think so. It's I think one of the things that people in the music industry that keeps them awake a bit at night sometimes is all these other things they have to compete with nowadays. They're competing with games, they're competing with Netflix, they're competing with all these other things you can spend your time watching and listening to. And yet people go to music, we go to YouTube, and what they want to do is play music and listen to music. I mean, the other stat that came out, this is a stat to kind of quote in the pub. There are now more than 29 billion videos on YouTube. And most of those aren't getting watched. Like in streaming, most songs aren't getting listened to. But it's just absurd, really, how many. But yeah, no, I think it's good news. But I do think next time YouTube is in a room with a label thrashing out a licensing deal, they will be pointed to saying, I see how much more important we are to your whole business. So we want more money. So I have to kind of deal with that.
Story 3, and I've been banging on about this since before Christmas, the changes in rateable values for venues, big and small, while at the same time, as we reported, there were changes around business rate relief for venues in the government's last budget just before Christmas. And together, these things, well, I mean, the threat was if nothing changes, 2 things. One, this would lead potentially to humongous rises in venues' business rates, which in turn, if the venues were then to pass on this increase to fans, may lead to a threatened £3 a ticket extra in the cost of going to see your favourite artist at an arena show. And while all that's happening at the top end, then almost certainly amongst the grassroots venues at the other end of the scale, we'd see probably, a raft of closures as soon as the new business rate kicked in April. But good news this week, because you might have seen this story, but last week, I think there were nearly 50 Labour MPs sent a letter to the Chancellor calling on her to act and in some way to help both venues and pubs, actually, as it goes. But when it came to venues, also, there was a lot of lobbying of the Treasury from the live industry, and particularly, I have to say, from the live music trade body, all of which eventually led to this government announcement last week that from April, it'll be giving venues a 15% discount on their business rates in 26-27, while also promising to freeze their rates in real terms for the following 2 years. And 15% 15% might not sound a lot. Whether it's enough for the grassroots scene, we're still sort of waiting to find out. But certainly I was told yesterday that even a 15% worth of rate relief, that would help save one leading live music arena venue in the UK somewhere in the region of £1.2 million in the next year. And that, of course, is a £1.2 million bill, which, as I say, could otherwise have been likely passed on to fans through increased ticket prices. So that, as I say, is a win. I mean, we still need a proper review of venues' rateable values to take into account the margins they operate on, and also how much they bring to local communities, both creatively but also financially. If you think about how much money a big arena venue generates with a string of concerts, how much money does that bring into the community? All these things are points which are constantly being made. But yes, the 15% business rate relief, one bright spark from last week. Okay, any other business, Stuart?
Yeah, well, I want to hark back to a story we covered last year when we talked about Bonnie Tyler's Spotify royalties, if you remember. And why would you not, obviously? Because there's been a follow-up. So there was a story, Total Eclipse of the Heart, her biggest hit, has just joined Spotify's Billions Club. So it's got more than 1 billion streams on that service. And BBC News did a little story about it, and she interviewed Bonnie Tyler, and she was very positive. She seems like a very positive person. But when they asked her how much she makes from streams of that song, she said basically, it's nothing, just about nothing. Which then sparked this kind of follow-up where Spotify actually got in touch and told me how much it paid her last year, or paid out for her music last year. So it paid out more than $1.4 million for her whole catalogue last year. And that follows on from the number we talked about last year, which was $1.3 million in 2024. So essentially, Spotify has paid out $2.7 million in the last 2 years for Bonnie Tyler's music. But she makes just about nothing from her biggest hit. And both of those things could be true, because what we're missing is all the middle stuff about what deal she has with the label at the time, how money is being paid through to her. We do know she didn't write the song. It was written by Jim Steinman of Meatloaf fame. So the publishing royalties were going to his estate. But yeah, so it's one of those mysteries where the headlines were all about how Bonnie Tyler makes nothing from streaming. And yet streaming is paying out money for her stuff. And so it comes back to this age-old mystery of what happens in the middle of it being paid out and the artist sat at the end waiting for money to drop in their account. But, billion streams for that song, that's it's one of those things where you can very quickly get to 1 billion streams if you're the latest song from, I don't know, Drake or The Weeknd. But quite regularly on YouTube and Spotify, you get these kind of 80s or 90s songs that suddenly have got to 1 billion. I think maybe like The Cure did one that got to 1 billion, and it always makes me kind of smile that it's not just about the new stuff that's reaching these big milestones. It's some classics too.
Back on the subject of live music, this is something which the BBC news website ran a piece on, and it's all about, how major pop stars, major artists are visiting less towns and cities. So artists, and this is a trend which is, I don't know, it's obviously it's post lockdown, but particularly I suppose over the last 2 or 3 years, this has become more noticeable, where somebody like Harry Styles, who's just put on sale a tour. Is it a tour though, when you're basically spending a lot of time in 3 or 4 cities rather than actually travelling around the country? So artists are travelling less, which means fans are having to travel more, and so the cost for the fan goes up. But yes, essentially less travelling costs for the artist, more travelling and accompanying accommodation costs possibly for the fans. As I say, this is becoming quite a trend, isn't it, Stuart?
It is, yeah. And I was looking at the Harry Styles tour. He's doing 30 nights at Madison Square Garden. Like a full month of dates. And 12 nights at Wembley, 10 in Amsterdam. And it seems to be things like I say, Beyonce did a bunch of dates in London. Ariana Grande is doing about 10 nights, I think, in London next year. Coldplay. Do you remember the Coldplay one when it was like many nights at Wembley and then 2 at Hull, I think? So it was kind of a random, not random, like that. Was Hull the warm up to Wembley? Were they kind of doing a smaller stadium first, or? There was a reason, wasn't there, to go there, I think.
Yeah, there was. Also, to be fair to them, they had already done a run of UK dates, hadn't they, where they'd been to other places. So this was sort of filling in some of the gaps, I think.
Yeah. And it's weird because, like you say, it's double-edged sword. So, every year, like UK Music, the industry body, they put out a report saying celebrating music tourism, like people coming to the UK and traveling to spend money and see concerts. And that's a good news story, the economic value of music tourism. But like you say, those costs are on fans, and there's also a climate cost as well. The fan travel is one of the biggest contributions to the climate impact of live music. So it's a weird thing, really. I mean, I think the BBC article did a good job of saying some of the reasons why it can be good to sort of do fewer different cities, and one of them is like the complexity of the sets and the productions. And if you're going to have to take them all down and set up in another stadium, another city. So I do understand where that comes from. Like, you're sort of thinking, I want to put on the best show possible with, I don't know how many costume changes Harry Styles had, but do you remember the Taylor Swift tour where it was just a mammoth, it was long, lots of set changes, costume changes, and doing that in one city does make more sense for the artist. So I guess we're going to see it more. I kind of just think about what's the equivalent for small bands, because you always talk about Little Grandad and you see them in the Windmill and Brixton. Are they also touring? Are they also playing other venues, or have they been basically playing there at this stage of their career? Like, is there an equivalent for small bands as well, where they stay in one place?
No, and this is the thing. This is the difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we might get onto this in the lock-in. I think in response to something which our guest last week, Ricky Bates from the Southampton Joiners, was talking about. How there's struggle as tours become smaller, but that's an economic thing rather than out of choice. Because when you're a big artist, of course the fans will go to you, but when you're a new artist, you have to go to the fans, I think. And yes, Little Grandad, they were on tour during Independent Venue Week, so they are finally getting out and about. But so first of all, you got to find you got to play in front of people and get quite good, and then you can go out and do some dates out
when they're all standing there,
dates out of town.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about Harry Styles I thought was interesting. So the other worrying thing, I suppose, is if you have to spend loads of money going to see Harry Styles in London because you need a hotel, you need all that stuff. Does that mean you're less likely to go to a nearest small venue because you spent it on the big gig? And that's something we discussed before. But then the flip to that is, as you said last show, I think, that Harry Styles is one of the artists who is chipping in with a levy on each ticket. So in his case, those is it 12, 13 nights at Wembley now? Each of the tickets sold for that is going to benefit small venues. So it's kind of there's pros and cons, aren't there, in terms of the impact?
Yeah. Venues and promoters and all sorts of groups, wherever the Live Trust decides to distribute the money. But it covers loads of, and some artists as well, that we pay back to artists at the bottom end of the scale who can't afford to do those extra 2 dates on their tour. It's all stuff like that. Staying with life, talking of not travelling very far, Bruno Mars basically almost didn't get out of bed for his last gig, but still attracted 12.8 million people because, yes, as you probably guessed, it was an online performance. But that's a huge amount of people logging in to see Bruno Mars.
It absolutely is. And to start this story, I need to talk to you about a thing called brain rot. Okay. Which I'm not being rude about Bruno Mars's music there. Okay, so look, I'm going to watch your face as I tell you this. So brain rot is this trend, very big for kids, that's basically like nonsensical AI-generated characters. It's like 3-legged sharks and crocodiles that are also bomber jets and drums that are waving baseball bats. It's almost like the kids responding to all this AI slop that grown-ups are seeing and saying, okay, we're going to celebrate this. We're going to create new characters out of it. And there's all these games that have got brain rot in the title and have these weird characters in. And there's a game called Steal a Brain Rot on Roblox, which is one of the biggest games. And to give you a sense of how big it is, last October, more than 25 million people were playing it at the same time, all these kids. And so Bruno Mars, or his team, whoever around him, said, the biggest game on Roblox, let's go and do a concert there. And they played this concert and 12.8 million people showed up. And I think another 53 million views on social media. So this thing, people went and visited and watched his virtual Bruno play a concert. But then they also posted about it elsewhere and it was this ripple effect. I think it was the day before his new album was announced or his tour was announced or the new single came out. So it was all part of the promo. And I guess the thing that is really interesting about this for me is like these games, like this brain rot thing, it's completely under the radar for most people and most adults. And if you know about it, it's because you're a parent going, what the hell is brain rot? And why is my child playing games called brain rot? Should I worry? And I felt like I suddenly realized that it's probably the equivalent for parents today as like, I don't know, like the Sex Pistols were to parents of punks. You know, that thing your kids do that you don't understand, you fear it and you don't like it. And it can't be music nowadays because your parents will be like, oh yeah, I like, that band you like too, because everything's on Spotify. But they will never understand brain rot games on Roblox. And that's why all the kids are doing it. And that's where the big superstar artists are going, right, we need to be part of this. Let's do a concert. So yeah, Bruno Mars, brain rot. That's the crossover explained.
And finally, just in case you thought we were going to get through an entire episode without any mention of AI, no. It's the chart that no one was asking for, but here it is anyway. The first global chart for AI-generated music has been launched. Who was number one? I mean, and we better do what are the chart eligibility rules? Do you have to be entirely AI generated in this case, or part AI generated? Is this going to work in reverse to what sort of music we're allowing on, major streaming services? Do you have to be entirely 100% AI to be eligible to be in the AI chart?
Yeah, it's like a reverse Turing test. Prove you're not human. Yeah, it's this new company I've never heard of them before called Sonic Intelligence Academy, and the rules here are, they won't include songs that are copying real human artists. So if you're cloning a real human, you can't be in this chart.
Right.
And they say they're watching out for bots and fraud, although that's quite a tough task.
Mm.
But yeah, they've got this new two charts actually. One is AI Music Top 100 and one is Top 100 AI Covers. And the idea is that they want to just have a little ranking of what is catching on, what's genuinely being listened to. And the first chart came out for the week of the 31st of January. And I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it, but it's this country song called I Don't Care by how do we say it? I don't like saying an artist because they're not an artist. They're an AI, by a project called Kane Walker. Who's like this grizzled country sort of thing. Is top. And then this song called by again, a virtual artist called Jacob and my Swedish is terrible. Sorry, Swedish listeners. Jag vet du är inte min, which is a song released in Sweden, an AI song that was banned from the real Swedish charts recently because it was AI. But it's number 2 in this one. Yeah, so it gives that sense of like this is the other place where these things are celebrated.
Yeah, that's that track, which is number 1, the country song, simply sounded like the theme tune for something on Sky Atlantic. I mean, it was a Sky Atlantic TV theme tune. That's what it sounded like to me.
But do you think good enough to be it? Like, is it at that level?
Oh, yeah. I mean, once again, here's the problem. Already people who write TV theme tunes are thinking, well, all our jobs are going because someone is coming up with something that sounds, moderately right for the mood of the program. I mean, how many times have you watched a detective series on any platform, on any TV station recently, where you go, I know exactly what this is going to be, and because it's just there is a style of how you do it. And once there's a style to what TV commissioners want, then you can make that style. And
you could train all of them. Yeah, God, Dennis Waterman was spinning in his grave, mustn't he? Because he used to be the TV theme tune king. But yeah, I mean, but I looked up this Kane Walker project, and he's got 1.2 million listeners on Spotify. So it is something that's got traction. So this might be I think this chart might be quite a good way of seeing what stuff is actually being listened to from the AI side, and then keeping track of it. Is it any good? And like you say, the level now is TV theme tune on Sky Atlantic. So this chart should be quite interesting if it's good. I mean, the thing that worries me is like there is so much fraud around AI music at the moment. Like there was a stat from Deezer recently saying 85% of streams of this music on its service are fraud and they're bots. So I don't know how you really protect your chart from anyone who's doing that. Like it's an expensive, complicated business, but I'm quite interested. I was interested to see. It'll be a good way of seeing which AI artists are popping up anyway and keeping tabs on those.
And that's it for this week. Thank you very much for listening. If you are into what we're trying to do here, which is, basically bringing you some of the stories and themes while demystifying the industry one small step at a time, do feel free to pass the word on to friends, family, colleagues, any rogue musicians you may know. You can also support us via Patreon. In fact, if you sign up to be a super fan, you can join us for our weekly lock-in, which is the extra bits which we record after we've finished this. You can gain access to that by becoming, a super fan of the show at patreon.com/thepriceofmusic. Or if you simply like to get in touch, any reactions, any comment on any of the stories this week, or any thoughts you'd like to share with us, or indeed any questions about any aspects of the music industry that you'd like explained as best we can, drop us a line, thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Until next week, take care, everybody. Cheerio.
Goodbye.